Hi, I'm Diana Belchase, and I'm here with paranormal and fantasy writer Alma Katzu, who has written two wonderful novels, The Takers and The Reckoning, and they're absolutely marvelous, and I wanted you to tell us a little bit about them.
Well, they're, as you said, fantasy series. They're a little bit the type of book that doesn't really fit in one category or another. It's got historical in it. It has a very dark love story. It has that fantasy element. It has the issue of immortality, which in this case is given out as a punishment, not as a gift. The evil are given eternal life so they can reflect on their sins and try to make amends for them. A lot of people have said it sort of reminds them of the early Anne Rice books, so it has that mix of sort of dark gothic story, that flavor, and but they're metaphysical. So even though they don't have like vampires or werewolves or that sort of thing, they're really dealing with issues of good and evil.
And very atmospheric.
Yes, very atmospheric. So, and at the heart of them, it's about love. Love is a wonderful thing, and it's a great motivator in our lives. It can bring you, the best that life has to offer, it has to do with love. But it also can bring out the worst in some people. I mean, people murder over love. They do terrible things, and that's what happens in this book. Characters are being challenged by their love, and some of them make the wrong choices. They're young, and then they find out what terrible, terrible choices they made, and they can't be released from this life until they figure it out and atone for their sins.
But I think the book is a little bit also about being sorry about what you ask for what you want and what you get can sometimes be two different things. Talk a little bit about that part of it.
Isn't that funny as a writer how after you've been writing for a while you start to see these themes that come out? And I found out that is one of the things that just seems to fascinate me, usually there are unintended consequences to everything. And when you're older, you've seen this pattern happen a few times. Maybe you're a little more circumspect about being careful what you ask for. But when you're young, I think sometimes you're apt to go after your dreams and not realize that it can sometimes backfire on you. And that's what happens in this book.
Yeah.
This young girl who has fallen in love with a man that she cannot have, rather than accepting that, she's completely obsessed with him for good reason. He's an incredibly dynamic and magnetic character. She just keeps trying. She loves him so much she's willing to eventually bend heaven and earth, time itself. Just, it has these incredible consequences, her love, and then she finds out what a mistake she's made.
Well, your plots are so deeply complicated and convoluted, and you seem to know people so well. And I know that you have been in intelligence for about 30 years, and I'm wondering if that's affected your writing.
Well, it's so funny. When I, first wrote the book, right, it's about magic and fantasy and love, about as far as it could possibly be from the world of intelligence. So I thought there was no connection between the two. And then one day I was up at Simon & Schuster, my publisher's office, and one of the editors said to me, I just have to ask you, all your characters are so deceptive and manipulative. Does that have something to do with your background in intelligence? And at first I was like insulted that she would say that, and then I thought, no, she's absolutely right. Because that is the atmosphere, for better, for worse.
Well, you write what you know, right?
You write what you know, and that is the environment that, I've kind of grown up in. People are always very careful to think about what information they're letting out and protecting secrets, and, you can't share information with everyone. And so that's been, I think that's one of the things that I probably do well. And that is the heart of a lot of storytelling. Your characters are not just blurting out everything. Usually they have goals, and they're trying to think how I'm going to meet my goal. And some other characters are helpful, and some characters are not helpful, and they have to think about how to control that situation. So that comes out. And the other thing I have to say is I do enjoy a complicated story. I don't like a story that's too simple and straightforward.
Yes, I agree.
And, I like there to be richness to it. So yeah, I try to put a lot of richness in my stories.
Well, talk about richness. You have Edgar Allan Poe appearing in this story, and we're here very close to Baltimore, where we're doing the interview today in Washington, D.C. So tell me a little bit about bringing in a historical character like that, and why you picked him.
Well, it's funny, because that was always sort of a pet peeve of mine. There's so many writers who wrap an entire book around an actual character. And sometimes I feel a little bit like it's grave robbing, you know. There are great stories, you know, you can't paint everything with the same brush, but it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And then, you know, I was thinking about the book, and there's a lot of allusions to Edgar Allan Poe in the first book. I mean, the main character's name is Lenore. I don't want to give anything away, but there's a theme of the cask of Amontillado at the end of the book. I grew up loving Edgar Allan Poe. I think I started reading him when I was like 8 years old. And, you know, those stories, such incredible, rich imagination, I think it really sets the bar high for writers. But so I thought, well, wouldn't it be funny if there was some overlap between Lanny's story and Edgar Allan Poe? Because there's similarities. And so I wrote a novella that came out between the first and second books called The Devil's Scribe, where Poe actually gets to walk into the story. And so you see a little bit of how the threads come together.
How much fun.
Well, it was a little daunting, too, because, you know, people who love Poe, and they don't want you messing around with them. So far, the reaction's been good.
Well, I love how you describe him as an unattractive man with a mouth like a bird.
Yeah, a beak.
Like a beak.
Well, you know, I was looking at all those pictures and just trying to think, you know, how to describe him.
Well, I think you did a great job, because no one ever thinks about what he really looks like, because his writing's so rich. But you are a delight to interview and to read, and I wish you every success. So if you haven't gone out yet and bought The Taken or The Reckoning, please go out and do so. You're not going to be disappointed, especially if you're a fan of paranormal or fantasy. And I'm Diana Belchase here with Alma Katzu. Keep reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's hope it didn't turn off this time.
Right.
Was that embarrassing?